Our speaker this morning is Mr. Pat Toole from IBM. In April 2011, Mr. Pat Toole joined IBM Global Technology Services as General Manager of Maintenance and Technical Support Services. Previously, Mr. Toole was Vice President and Chief Information Officer of IBM, where he focused on advancing the company's transformation agenda and aligning IBM's information technology investments to the business strategy. Prior to that, he was General Manager of IBM Intellectual Property. Since joining IBM in 1984, Mr. Toole has held a variety of executive and management positions in technology, manufacturing, engineering, information systems, marketing, and sales, including his role as Senior Site Executive of IBM Charlotte, Vice President in IBM's Corporate Enterprise on Demand Transformation and Information Technology Business, and General Manager of the IBM Engineering and Technology Services Division. Mr. Toole is a member of the IBM Performance Team, which is the IBM Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer's senior executive team responsible for implementing IBM strategies and for driving overall business performance. He's also a member of the Chairman's IBM Integration and Values Team. Mr. Toole holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Notre Dame, and he serves on the university's Graduate Studies and Research Advisory Council. He also holds a master's degree in business administration from Queen's University of Charlotte. Mr. Toole represents IBM as a member of the Board of Trustees on the Committee for Economic Development that addresses national priorities to promote sustained economic growth in America. He's on the Board of Directors of Visible Assets Incorporated, a real-time asset intelligence business, and he serves on the boards of directors of 2 not-for-profit organizations. He's also actively involved in advancement of technology and service within his community. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Pat Toole. Thank
you. Woody Allen once said that 80% of success is showing up. And as I watched previous speakers and their talks to you, it really struck me how much of life is really all about the journey. And boy, did they really live the journey. And so it's a real honor for me to join you today to talk a little bit about my journey and to hopefully give you some advice as you embark on your own individual paths in life. I will say that I have 5 children. 2 have graduated from college, 2 are in college, and 1 in high school. They tend to ignore my advice, so feel free to ignore my advice as well. But the great thing about journeys, I think, is that they always start with a spark. You know, what gets you onto the path of whatever you're going to do. And the thing that really got me excited about a career in technology and becoming an engineer was when I was probably around 19. I co-opted for IBM in our Federal Systems Division at the time. And I had done something and got a little bit of an award for some technology that I'd worked on. And my grandmother was bragging to her neighbor about this thing. It really was nothing. But he was about 35 years old. And he was the kind of guy who never really had the opportunity to go to college. I'm not sure he even finished high school. But he would give you the shirt off his back, just a real salt-of-the-earth guy. And I remember talking to him, and he was congratulating me on this award. And he said something to me that always stayed with me, and that's that he said, you know, people like you really have to do everything you can to create jobs for people like me. And it just struck me that, in this world and in this country, we all are blessed with different aptitudes and different things that we're good at. And unfortunately, there's just not a lot of people that have a deep knowledge, understanding, and aptitude for science and math and engineering and computer science. But these are the things, the innovations that really drive society. And so it always struck me that what we can do as engineers and computer scientists is to try to make the world a better place through creation of jobs and opportunity for people to really help them succeed in whatever they're trying to do. And so I would just implore you to use your talents, for the good, and think about ways that you're able to apply whatever you learn in order to benefit society and hopefully create jobs for people, especially, as we all know, in the current environment that we're in. The second thing I would say about a journey is that it's a lifelong process. And my wife always accuses me of dreaming up things to do just so I can get out of the house. But I've really spent my life learning a variety of things. And again, it was someone I met along the path that really I wanted to emulate. And it's one of my professors when I was in MBA school. After I graduated, I always knew I wanted to be in technology and I wanted to be a manager of technology. So as soon as I graduated and started working for IBM, I started night school to get an MBA, and it took me 3 years. I had to do a lot of prerequisites. I didn't have a lot of business classes. As you know, the curriculum's pretty structured, so you don't have a lot of electives or opportunity to kind of stray outside the technical fields. But anyways, one of my professors was a PhD in economics, so he taught me micro and macroeconomics, but he was also my dentist. He was a professor at the University of Florida, and whatever reason he got bored with teaching economics, he decided that he wanted to become a periodontist, and so he got his degree in dentistry and opened up a small office in Charlotte, North Carolina. But his undergraduate work was actually mechanical engineering, and so he had a small consulting company on the side where he did mechanical engineering. And also because he had all these bills from being a perpetual student, he joined the Army Reserve, and he was a dentist for the Army on weekends. But he also played football for NC State when he was in college, and so he was a referee for ACC football during football seasons. And it just inspired me that, on this journey, there is time if you can make the time for the things you really want to do. And so my own journey, as I've gotten fascinated with things, from everything from martial arts, where I spent a lot of time earning a couple black belts and learning a lot of different systems, to music, where 10 years ago I decided to learn to play the cello and still play it as kind of my a way to vet off some of the pressures that build up in the work environment. There's time in this journey to do the things we really like to do, and there's time to get involved and interested in many different aspects of life. And the third piece I would say about the journey that's always been important to me is to learn along the way and develop a recipe for success. And just another quick story about someone that I met along my journey that had a big influence was also when I was in MBA school. I was living in this small apartment, and my next door neighbor was a really fascinating guy. He did what was called workouts. His background was business, and so he worked in a company of 4 people. And what they did was took over companies with the sole objective of obviously getting the money out for the investors, but saving jobs. They wouldn't take a company they didn't think they couldn't turn around. And so because I knew a lot about information technology, he would invite me over to look at the cases that he was working on, and he would ask me for some advice about how he could get data out of systems, or how he could get his arms around some of the things that they had to get information so he could make better decisions to improve the performance of the companies. And he had a recipe of how to turn these companies around, and over time he taught me this recipe that I've been able to apply in my own various different businesses I've run inside IBM. And he had just fascinating companies that he would turn around, everything from a NASCAR race team to a company that made food products with 30 factories. So he had really no scope or limit to what he applied it to. But probably the funniest story was he got involved with a company that made dietary brownies. And the only problem with the brownies is that they tasted like dirt. So, sales weren't so good. So he went in and took over, and he called in the chief financial officer, and he said, how much cash do we have? And the CFO said, well, we thought there was $500, but we think that's gone now. So and he said, well, when's payroll? And he said, well, it's in about 2 weeks. We just made payroll, but obviously there's no money to make the next payroll. And he said, well, don't worry, we're going to make payroll. And he said, well, how are we going to make payroll? He said, well, how much do you think all those trees are on our property worth? He goes, I don't know. He says, well, call up all the landscaping companies and get bids. We're going to sell all the trees. And he said, then I want you to take 2 inches of topsoil off the back of the property and sell all of that. Well, he sold enough dirt and landscaping to actually make payroll in 2 weeks. And then the way he turned the company around is that, if I remember the story correctly, the brownies didn't taste good, but they last forever. So, and it turns out there's various factions in the government who kind of like that food that stays for a long time. So he was able to sell the food and get enough leeway in order to improve, obviously, the taste of the brownies and the things he needed to invest in. But he taught me this recipe that in any business, there's multiple facets that all have to work together, and you can't under or over invest in any part of them. But you really have to have a balance, and you have to stay focused and have clear objectives and then drive the company. And so in any event, over time of your careers, I'm sure you'll all develop certain recipes that you'll get involved with and ways of being successful. But if, as Woody Allen said, if 80% of success is just showing up, I would say the other 20% is really all about taking risk and doing things that really feed your soul to allow you to persevere. In my own experience, I've been really blessed to have a couple opportunities where I was either able to work on things that were really, really interesting from a technology standpoint and were a big risk from a business standpoint that once they paid off, it was huge benefit to our investors, shareholders. And also on projects that really gave me great internal satisfaction that I was applying whatever skills I had to better other people's lives. So on the one hand, a project that my teams worked on that was really fascinating was around the early 2000s, roughly 2002 to 2005. We worked on the design of the microprocessors for the 3 major game consoles. And it was fascinating in a sense to learn all about the gaming industry and how the technology has to work in these boxes, because unlike PCs, where the objective is to keep the microprocessor price fairly constant and constantly add new features and functions, as you probably know if you play games on these consoles, it takes about 3 or 4 years to really develop the software games. So you have to deliver the performance needed for the game console that you need for the next 7 years and continually drive the price down. And so in order to do that, we had to design microprocessors that had, in one case, 3 cores in it that had never been done before. Hundreds of engineers working on this project. Huge risk, because if it didn't pay off, we'd invested a lot of money in obviously the technology and getting the stuff to work. But fortunately, in all 3 cases, we got the chips to work and we were able to meet performance criteria, and we have the game consoles that we have today in the marketplace. And so from a pure technology standpoint, huge risk, but also a huge benefit. On more of the personal side, again, I've been very fortunate to be involved in just some projects that really were fundamental in applying engineering to change people's lives. And probably the most profound one was, it was a small company asked us to partner with them to develop a wearable computer for autistic children. It turns there's a number of autistic children that have what they call parroting. They're able to hear something and then repeat it. They do it out of context. It's just something, they have some speech capability, but not really cognizant of what the application of that is. So in any event, we worked with this small company to develop a wearable computer where we built the computer in a backpack. So the child would wear this backpack, and then on their arm was a touch display. So this is long before we had things like iTouches and iPads and this sort of thing. So this was in the early 2000s, so it was kind of unique at that time. And the display on the arm had all these icons. And the child could put together sentences and press these icons. And one of the companies that licensed their icons to us through a software company was McDonald's. And I remember one of the parent stories was that for years he was taking his 8-year-old to McDonald's and ordering him a hamburger Happy Meal. And this one time he took his child and he's starting to order, and his son's tugging on his arm, And he pushes these icons, and the backpack had built-in speakers, and spoke to him and said, "I want a Chicken McNugget Happy Meal." And so he never knew all these years that's what his child wanted. And then we were able to give one of the devices to one of our employees who had a 6-year-old autistic child at the time. And it used to take her 20 minutes to figure out what the child wanted for breakfast, because she would literally line things up, and eventually he would just end up kicking and screaming on the ground. He was so frustrated because he couldn't communicate what he wanted. And so she said after working with this device for about 6 weeks, he came down one morning and it just spoke to her, "I want cornflakes for breakfast," or something like that. And she just was amazed at the change, in life. And the thing that was most profound is he put together a sentence that said, "I love you." She had never heard her child say, "I love you" before. And so to me, this is, the things that motivate us as technologists to really do things that make a difference and have an impact on people's lives. But of course, in order to do these great things, it takes leadership. So I wanted to make a few comments, at least of what have I learned about leadership over the years. And I would start by saying that I think there's 5 qualities that all great leaders really have. And I think number 1 is it starts with integrity. If people don't trust you, they're not going to work for you. If they don't think you're being honest with them, they're going to go do something else or work for somebody else. And so it all starts with that. Number 2 is it takes competency. You have to know what you're doing. You have to really understand the function that you're leading, the things that you're trying to do. And that also goes back to the trust. If people trust you and you believe that you're competent, at least that's a foundation that you can start with to build effective two-way communications. And the third piece I would say is really helping develop a shared vision with the people. And I remember one time in my career, they asked me to take these 3 groups that, whatever reason, didn't really like each other, didn't like working with each other, worked against each other constantly, and try to make them into a cohesive team. And it really wasn't their fault. It was just a complete lack of clarity around the missions of these 3 teams. So the first thing I did was I called them all together and basically explained to them, why we're doing this, because, things aren't working out, and we're going to start working together. And what I did to kind of make the point or emphasize it is I got these children's puzzles. They have like 150 pieces or so in them. And I broke them into 3 teams. And I had people from each of the 3 groups, in working together on these teams. So the first group, I gave them a puzzle with the right box top. And the second group, I gave them a puzzle with the wrong box top. And the third group, I gave them the puzzle pieces in a clear plastic baggie. And so the analogy I was using with them is that at the end when they did it was that, if you have the box top with the right pieces, you have that vision that people can all see and visualize and work together to put the puzzle together. When the leader is misaligned with what the people think you're supposed to be doing, you end up with the box with the wrong cover and the pieces inside. And if you're just an absolute horrible leader and give no direction, you might as well not have anybody and just have the bag of parts in a clear plastic baggie. And it was funny when I said go and they, to see who would finish first, the team with obviously the right box top and the right pieces finished far ahead of the other 2 teams. The team that finished far last was the team with the wrong box top and the different pieces, because they kept arguing. No, he would never do that. He'd never give us the wrong top. It must be the right one, but there's no color. We can't find. And then it was funny that the team that came in second, which just had the pieces, with a lack of leadership, they did what was natural, which is, well, we'll attack it systematically. We'll do the outside borders, and then we'll just match pieces to the borders, and we'll just kind of work it out. And so that's how they approached it. So any leader that's going to be effective, if you want to be the most effective, you have to develop this shared vision and get everybody bought into it, and then obviously all work together. The other thing that kind of ties to that is you have to inspire people, because especially in the technical community, obviously this is really a smart group of people, and they want to be motivated. They want to come to work inspired to do something that's beyond what they can do as individuals. And so I always felt that for any effective leader, if people are going to follow you, you have to think about ways that you're going to inspire them intrinsically to want to come into work every day, or at least work for your company and do a great job. And Think about a company like IBM, where we have 440,000 employees. We're roughly about $100 billion in revenue, operating in about 173 countries. I mean, we have to think of ways to get people to buy into our strategy, to understand our vision, to work with them to create that shared vision, and obviously inspire them, because there's so many other companies that they could go work for. And we feel very blessed they choose to work for IBM, but it's up to us as leaders to keep inspiring them to hopefully want to continue to work for IBM. And then the last ingredient I would say is that the most effective leaders I've met, and I've been able to travel the world and meet many, is the best all do it with really a sense of humility. I mean, they really recognize that what they're working on is much bigger than they are. They don't put themselves in front of whatever brand they're representing. And I would say that's definitely true in IBM. I think we've had about 9 CEOs, or 8. Our 9th one just got named. She starts January 1st. Longtime IBMer, Ginny Rometty. She's probably been with IBM for at least 30 years or so. And most qualified person I can think to take over the reins from our current CEO. Just an outstanding individual, and these characteristics I just talked about of leadership, she embodies them all to the nth degree. And this last one, clear sense of humility. I've never seen her put herself or our current CEO chairman ahead of IBM, ahead of our we call 8-bar logo. They're always constantly thinking about how do we add value to our clients. They're never thinking about how do I just add value to myself. So humility, I think, is just a clear and one of the most important things to have as an ingredient. Then the other thing I've learned about leadership over the years is it's really important to build as strong a team as you possibly can. It really starts and ends with talent, the talent in every position. And I remember when I was a young executive, I used to feel, oh, I'm so smart. I can no matter what the team is, I can drive it over the goal line. I can make this work. And I was killing myself. And then I remember seeing an interview with the basketball coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, Phil Jackson. And it was about the time he took over the Lakers job after leaving the Bulls. And I remember a reporter asking him, Phil, I don't remember the exact words, but basically, why would you go from the Bulls to the Lakers, where you have Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal? Why don't you want to prove how great a coach you are and take a team like Sacramento or somebody and turn them around and win a championship with them? We know you can win a championship with great players. And he just looked at the reporter like, you must be an idiot. I mean, he said, the goal is to win championships. Why would I take a job with no talent and kill myself when the goal is to win a championship? I want to start with the best athletes I could possibly find and then see if we can go win a championship. And so it really struck a chord with me that in many organizations when I was younger, I spent too much time trying to do it myself and overcoming some of the shortcomings of some of the people that I had in key roles, thinking I could change them, I could overcompensate for whatever their lack is. And so from that point on, I spent a lot of time focused on what are the key positions in my organization, and do I really have the right people in those jobs, obviously to be as successful as we can. And the last thing I'll just mention about leadership is, if you want to be a great leader, I think, just like the life's journey, you have to be a student of leadership, constantly be studying different models, new models, trying to understand what makes great leaders, and incorporating those characteristics into your own recipe. And that's been an interesting journey for myself, because I'm not a natural leader. I don't consider myself a great leader. I'm a very quiet person. I'm a very introspective person. And it's just not my natural thing to do, to stand up and be rah-rah and cheer a bunch of people on to things. And so, I've tried to study people in all different fields and walks of life, but more people that I view as fitting more my personality. So I'll follow coaches in football or sports in general that have more of an intrinsic approach to the game. What are they doing that are allowing them to win championships? I'll read about different fields, and one of the most fascinating books I read was called Killer Angels, and it's a story of the Battle of Gettysburg, but it's told from the sides of the generals and leaders on both sides, the North and South. And it's a fascinating study in this 3-day event of all the decisions that were made on both sides at different levels, and the impact that that had on the outcome. And I won't go into the story and ruin it for you, but there's one character, Joshua Chamberlain, who was a professor from the University of Maine. He spoke like 7 or 8 languages. He was well-known, well-learned. And the university wouldn't release him to lead this corps from Maine into the battle. And so he applied to get a sabbatical in Europe, but he got it approved, but instead of going to Europe, he joined the army. And he took this infantry down and he joined the battle. And the decisions he made, if he hadn't made them, if he didn't have the courage and do certain things, he never, it's clear when you read the story, the South probably would have won that battle. It's quite phenomenal. The decisions of one person, one leader, on one side of the battle had such a huge impact on the outcome. And I've learned that in business. There's really no insignificant decision. All the things that you do, the important thing is to make the decision, and then if it's a wrong one, correct it and do something different. And then just to kind of close the story on Joshua, it was really interesting. There's a follow-on book that the author wrote that talks about the battles that were after Gettysburg. But at the final battle when General Lee surrendered, they asked Joshua Chamberlain to accept the arms of the defeated army. And the way he did that went a long way into bringing the country back together, because what he did is he had all the Union troops line up and salute as the Confederate people came in to drop their arms. He gave them great respect. And his actions, again, had such an impact on the healing of the country that occurred after it. So you can find examples of leadership in probably the most uncommon of places, and it's important to look for those things and study and read about those. So I'll just conclude with just a few words that were maybe more germane to your own situation as students. And as you go out and build your own careers and your own successes, develop your own leadership style. But I think I would start with, where other speakers I heard resonate as I listened to their talks earlier this year. And I think there's a common thread that there has to be some passion. You're going to be doing something for 12, 14 hours a day. You might as well enjoy it, right? So whatever that passion is and whatever it takes to get engaged in that would be my advice, to find that and do it and stick with it, persevere. The second thing is, just where I started in terms of 80% of success is showing up. You got to show up in a sense and find internships or anything you possibly can, no matter what the pay is, even if it's no pay, to get experience so that you know or don't know if that's what you want. But more importantly, in today's economy, so people get to know you as a person. What are the things that you can bring to the table? What are the skills that you have? So they get comfortable and confident with you. When I got out of college, it was a much different world than we were getting as an engineer. Unsolicited offers to go work for companies. There was just a shortage of engineers. As I've seen with my own children, sadly, it's not that way anymore. And so my oldest son, his major was in television and film, and so he took a job working 30 hours a week. Now, he graduated in August, making $10 an hour just to get more experience, and hopefully, will lead to a permanent job. But it's really, really tough. But the only path I know of, and it's true in my own case, I had 3 or 4 internships, is to get in there and do something that's germane to what you have a passion about, and then hope that someone recognizes your skills and ability and is willing to take a chance on you. And it will happen. Unfortunately, it's just I think it just takes more patience than it really ever has had before. And so, as you hopefully can build this resume up and find your path and do something that's exciting. At the end, it's really, enjoy the journey, have fun at it, and let it absorb you. And really I've never worried about tomorrow, but always focused on the moment and get great joy out of that. And everything else will just fall into place and take care of itself. And the last thing I'll just say is, you have abilities that my generation doesn't have. And it's very true when I came into the workforce. I came in '84, a year after personal computers were invented. And I was fortunate to be trained in personal computers when they first came out in '83. My undergraduate is electrical engineering, but my concentration was in computers. And so when I first started in the workforce, the engineers that I worked with were far more intelligent than me, far more capable, but everything they did was in analog. So it took them like 6 months to get something done. And I could do it with a PC and some general purpose interface buses and, you know, Pascal programming language, be equivalent to maybe Java today. I could get it done in a month. And so obviously if the people running the business says, well, you know, person A can get it done in a month and person B takes 6 months, you're going to take person A. You know, it's not complicated. But I feel the same transition is occurring today with social business. I mean, the things that you have just insight in and knowledge of just because of how you work in a collaborative way, in a virtual way, of leveraging technology in a way my generation never probably thought possible or can dream of, you will find whole new business models and ways to apply that that will make you much more competitive than the people that preceded you. So don't sell yourself short. Always look for those ways, the things that you know how to do, the technologies that you work with, the technologies of today, and apply those to businesses in a new and innovative way. And I'm sure you'll be able to be extremely competitive and hopefully add incredible value to our society. So with that, I'll stop my formal comments. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and spend time with you today, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Yes?
Do you have any specific recommendations for students right now as undergraduates to get prepared to enter the workforce?
I think it's, you know, I would say there's like 3 aspects. For people that are studying technology, the general thing is that it teaches you how to be really good at solving problems. And so I would obviously look for ways to be able to see a problem, identify a solution, and figure out ways to implement that solution. That's just generic. That's when we hire engineers and technical people. We assume that. But second, as I said, the most important thing you could do, I think, is to get some real experience. Even if it's not doing anything that appears meaningful. My 4th child is a marketing major. And so she had an internship for no money at the Long Island Islanders. And in the marketing department, she learned what they do. Last summer, she worked for a hockey team that's a minor league team in our area. Got to learn what they do in marketing. She was really doing trivial things, and she would kind of whine at night, you know, oh, look what they had me do today, you know. But the important thing at the end of it, you know, thinking long term, I would ask her, well, what did you see other people doing that may be of interest to you, or what do you really hate and you know you don't want to do that? And it was true in my own case. I had 3 co-op assignments, and I learned a great deal about, I had 4, I guess, counting high school. What did I like and what did I hate doing? And so when it came to interview, it was, you have a much more intelligent interview with the person. You know, I always get frustrated when I interview students and I say, what do you want to do? And they say development. You know, it's kind of like a big field. Inside development, if you've ever had an internship or worked there, you know that there's a variety of tasks and things that people do. And so the only way to do that is to obviously actually, you know, get some experience doing that. And so I would worry less about the particular task they ask you to do and spend more time on just getting the task and while you're there, meeting and learning as many people what they do as possible. And I've seen it in my own kids. I mean, my oldest daughter had a number of internships, and she went on to get her MBA, and she has a good job now, only because the company she internship with hired her, so she had a path. My oldest son, he's really struggling because he played rugby for University of Notre Dame, and every summer he was injured, had to have some major surgery. So he tore his shoulder like 3/4 around, you know. And so he finally, before his senior year, finally had his first internship. But it wasn't enough to be competitive, you know, for permanent. And now he's taking a job, as I said, $10 an hour, but he's getting good experience, and I'm sure it'll lead. And my other 2 kids are business majors. One worked for a bank in Boston, and he lived there for the summer in like a 1-room thing, but they like him, so they offered him for next summer, and they're already talking about permanent. So this is why I say I just can't overemphasize getting people to know you and performing whatever job that is, whether it's sweeping the floor or designing the most complex circuit in the world. Do it as best as you can, and have a positive attitude, and do what you can so they get to know you and, you know, hopefully hire you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I saw online, I'm trying to find it right there, that the average stay of a CEO of a company of that position is like 3 to 4 years. seems awfully short. Why would you say that is?
I'm not an expert on CEO tenures, but I would say just an observation is it's the complete transparency of information. When you look at what's available about company performance and what they're doing, I mean, just watch CNBC. There's like constant reports of how things are doing, and there's constant shifts in where money is being invested because of the information that's now available. To put it in contrast, IBM's first CEO, Thomas Watson Sr., he was afraid to fly. And so when he would go do business in Europe, he had to take a boat, and it would take like 2 weeks. Can you imagine the CEO of IBM being out of pocket for 2 weeks today? I mean, it never happened. And technology available today, you're working 24/7. So I think what drives it is that there's real-time information, and there's the ability of people to move their money in real time to invest in companies based on that information. So you see much more volatility that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And that volatility is a direct result of CEO performance. If a CEO is not performing well, meaning the stock's not doing well, investors get impatient and they want to change. And so I think it's a very, very difficult job. Anyone who's running a company, because obviously there's just complete transparency, as there should be out there, but it's much harder to think long term. A lot of the CEOs, I think, are driven toward short-term performance because of the environment that they're in now, which didn't exist probably even 20 years ago. Yeah.
Earlier into the presentation, you said that it's very important that we try to benefit the society and create jobs. What are the things that you feel like we in technical positions should be getting our hands dirty with?
I always think that where to benefit society is you start where the biggest problems are. And when I think about big problems, I think, as an example, clean water. I don't know what the percentage of people on this planet is that do not have access to clean water, but it's really astounding. It's sad. You think about energy. What are the future sources of energy, and how is that going to affect our planet? I mean, there's always fundamentally large societal problems that attract the best research teams, scientists, and engineers. And those are the projects where grants tend to go to and investment goes to. And so I always would encourage people to study where are the problems today from the aspect of we personally think they are, but also where do you see venture capitalist money going? Where do you see universities spending their time? Where are government grants being put? Those are the problems that are going to create hopefully with breakthroughs, jobs and growth in the future. So when I was, as I think Chuck said, working in intellectual property, a couple of the areas that I chose to work with joint research on were clean water was one, clean energy was another one, and I'm trying to think of the third one. But they were big problems that IBM believed in and I believed in, that had really, the other one was recyclables. We worked on a process to be able to organically decompose the plastic that are in these bottles. That, as you know, takes like forever to decompose. Yeah.
When you think about taking risk in business, what kind of thinking process do you do?
Well, I think about when I take risk, in a sense, it has to be calculated risk and it has to be personal. So what I mean is, I work for a public company, so it's not my money, it's the investor's money. So I always have to keep that in mind. I remember as a young manager, I used to complain to my father, who was a 36-year IBM veteran, and I'd say, well, if my company, I would do it this way, or I'd do it different. And he'd say, well, it's not your company, it's not even your money. We have to have all these, whatever bureaucracy, process, procedures, because we have to protect the investors, the shareholders. Never forget that you work on behalf of the shareholders. So, you always have to keep that in mind, not do something stupid or crazy. The other hand, when I think back in my career, there's always been, I would say, 4 or 5 moments where I was willing to put my badge on the table and say, if this doesn't work, fire me. I believe so strongly in this that we really need to do this. It's in the best interest of our shareholders, our people, our clients, that I'm willing to stake my career on it. And that's where it comes down to, do you have the courage to do that or not? And it's in my career, I've done it measured, as I say, 4 or 5 times, but that's why I'm not an entrepreneur out there, because I'm a, kind of a quiet, reserved engineer. I'm not a huge risk taker, but there has been clearly points in my career where I made big bets, and fortunately those big bets worked, but I was willing to take the consequences. If it didn't work out, I was certainly willing to accept the, being perhaps even as far as severed from the company. So, yeah.
In your career, can you let us know what your biggest satisfying moment and your least satisfying moment were?
Yeah, I would say my most satisfying moment is always seeing somebody do something they never thought they could do. I mean, as a manager or a leader, what motivates me is working with people to do the impossible, and to see the joy and satisfaction they get, the growth that occurs with them as a person. And then, that results in impact on people. I mentioned the autistic children's story. Another one I worked on with my team was these programmers for pacemakers. And we did 2 of the major companies. We developed the programmer. And the way it works is the programmer is actually connected to the patient. And one of the companies said, Pat, for you to really understand what we do and how important it is that your device works with 100% quality, I want you to go see one of these surgeries. So he sent me to Bridgeport Hospital, and I stood about 2 feet from the surgeon as this woman came in, and she had 3 chambers of her heart paced. And before the operation, she couldn't walk like 10 feet with having to sit down because she just wasn't getting enough oxygen in her body. And then after the operation, within a week or so, she could walk around just like you or me. It doesn't talk about the quality of her life in terms of, it doesn't fix her heart, but certainly allows her to do things she never was able to do before. So when you see the work that you do, and you see the joy in your people, and then you see the impact on the people that you did it for, I mean, to me, that was the most rewarding. The toughest part for me is also with the people. I mean, when you manage groups of people, large or small, there's always going to be a tragedy in someone's life. And, it's just really hard. Actually, one of my employees, one of my managers, was in Florida at the time, and his 2-year-old son drowned, got stuck underneath a float in a pool. And to be talking with him and just, what can you do? I mean, to me, those are the hard times. I had a manager that was dying of leukemia. I was down in Boca. And he asked me for permission to have his laptop in the hospital. I said, why would you do that? Worry about other things. And he said, no, I don't want my team to think I quit on them. So anyways, these things in our careers, to me, the good and the bad, it gets down to people, or, I agonize every time. I have to run the business, and so I have to make very difficult decisions that affect people's lives. If we have to, essentially lay off people at some point, I mean, these are very difficult decisions, and at least they eat at me. I spend great time and energy understanding all aspects before I make the decisions. So I say, I would answer it good or bad. To me, it's all about people. The best and the worst. It's all about people. Yes.
What charitable organizations do you support?
Well, one as an example is Caroline House in Bridgeport. It's in a very tough part of the city of Bridgeport, so to speak. And what we do is we educate women and their preschool children where English is a second language, and we also teach them life skills to try to help them, make a better life for themselves and their family. And so we have, I think now, a little over 100 women that walk to the center. They don't have cars. And so we teach them 4 levels of English, and then we also teach them basic things, and we help them with immigration and that sort of thing. And then we also take their preschool children, and we try to get them to read, because we have a fundamental belief that if you start out behind, you're going to be behind throughout your school years. So that's one organization that my wife and I are involved in. My wife goes once a week, and my wife's a musician, and so she plays guitar and sings with the children once a week. And But it's phenomenal when you meet the women who have gone through the program, and one woman I met went on to become a lawyer. Many cases, I mean, the women are educated, some are, some aren't, but they just don't know English, and they don't know how to function in the United States of America. So anyways, that's one example of a charity I'm involved in. Yes?
Earlier you mentioned a recipe to success for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind briefly going over that?
Well, that's my secret sauce, I mean. If they weren't videotaping, I would. But I would say generically, where I start with is I have a 24-hour plan, I have a 30-day plan, I have a 90-day plan, and then I have a 3-year vision. And so I spend time, to me, it's all about execution. There's lots of smart people. There's lots of people that can make pretty charts. There's lots of people that have great visions, but there's not a lot of people who can translate that into real action and to lead a team and drive them to results and outcomes. And so my recipe is really all built around outcomes, clarity around the outcomes, and getting everybody working together on the same page to deliver those outcomes. So it's a fairly rigorous engineering-oriented process, as you can imagine. But yeah, it would have to be a whole nother lecture. If someone would be interested in inviting me back, I could probably give a lecture on this recipe of taking over a business or a unit or whatever and trying to drive it toward performance. Yes?
Could you compare and contrast how you, as a hiring manager, hiring other managers, the different degrees coming in, how you view them?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a great question. I have a bias toward PhDs. I think the brightest I've worked with were all physicists. I don't know why, but something about physics, and it's kind of all-encompassing, I guess, and the way physicists approach problems, I've just found that degree to be extremely valuable at the highest end. In terms of masters of any sort of business, to me what's important is the structure of the case study program. What engineering allows you to do or does for you is allows you to solve problems. What a case study oriented MBA does is allows you to solve them fast. That's the way I look at it. So the problem with, when I was competing with, I wasn't competing, but in a sense of, why maybe did I get picked for a job over someone else? A lot of engineers tend to just want too much data before they make a decision, because we're kind of engineered that way, right? But when you're doing, my MBA program was at night, so our case study program was we did 4 a week. I took a 1-week course at Harvard once, and they do 11 a week. So what's the difference? Well, when you do a case study, you have hundreds of pages of background material on the industry. You have a case itself with financial data, et cetera. And then you literally only have a week, to make a recommendation, set of actions to do. And so in my own career, as I found myself in areas where we were trying to turn it around or whatever, we had to make very quick decisions with less than perfect data. And to me, that's what master's degrees, especially in business, teach you to do. They teach you to fundamentally sort out what data you need, get that data, and quickly make a decision and execute and move on. So that's where I see the value in a master's degree. And then where I see the technical undergraduate value is, as I said, problem solving, but so much of, at least in my company, is all, at the end of the day, it's all about technology. So to have an intrinsic feel of what that technology is doing and how it could be applied, I mean, that's invaluable background, obviously, to make any decision, or foundational, I should say. So anyways, that's, for what it's worth, that's my view of various degrees. And at the end of the day, it's not really where you went, or it's really what you did at the end of the day, how you applied it, whatever you learned. And as I said, the journey is about continuous learning. You never really stop. You can't allow yourself to get stuck in a particular decade or zone.
Question, Wayne, Pat.
Oh.
I know you mentioned Killer Angels is a book you read that gave you a different perspective. Do you have any other books you would recommend?
That's a tough question. I'm a voracious reader, so so many books have had an impact on me. I just read a book. A friend of mine's a professor out at Stanford Business School, and I can't think of the name of it now, but it was all about leadership. And I wholeheartedly agree with everything he said in it, and that patterned actually a lot of my own career at doing the stuff that he wrote about. I'll have to try to get the name of the book, but it just came out. What other books? The other thing that impacts me a lot is movies. You know, there's maybe because some days I have a very short attention span. I just saw a movie with Martin Sheen a couple weeks ago called The Way, where, you know, again, it talks about this journey. It's a true story about a man's son went to do this pilgrimage from France to Spain. It takes about 3 weeks, it's 500 miles. And the son died the first day into the journey. And so the father went and decided to complete the journey for the son. And so the son's body was cremated, and so he carried the ashes with him on this journey. And there was flashbacks with he and his son. And so there's these profound movies that I think, you know, cause us to think about our own lives and what our priorities are, what's important, how we're spending our time. And, you know, I'll have to give it more thought, but to me, these are the books and movies that I tend to spend in my time reading. And when I was younger, I used to read a lot of fiction books, and then at least for me, I just concluded it wasn't helping me. Is there another question in the back? Yeah.
During your internships, did you find the experience that you gained on the job, or like the mentors you worked with, a more valuable part of the process?
Yeah, it was both. It's a great question. I was thinking about that actually as I was flying down, and it's funny how things work out. Sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time. I took a course on operating system design, and I was working in this manufacturing plant, and the other manufacturing plant the manufacturing plant another one was having some problems, and my boss was out of town. He said, "So would you go to this meeting for me?" I said, "Okay." So the plant manager was leading the meeting. You know, who was I? I was sitting in the back, and they were explaining all these problems. And I could see the problem because I knew queuing theory from operating system design, and some of the co-op things I had worked on was kind of in this field. And I remember like raising my hand, and the plant manager said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, you realize you're working on the wrong problem." And I went through all this stuff. A week later, I became manager of operation research for the... But, yeah, it's funny how, I always say that there's fundamentally two ways to build your career, and I've always tried to build it on increasing competence on things I've done in the past. And so the things that I did, like learning operating systems, I applied to manufacturing, supply chain management. You see these threads that you do in your past, and you build on those, and you make a career out of it. There's other people that are just so smart they can kind of do anything. I'm not one of those people, but they, whatever it is, whatever they seem to do turns to gold, and they just have some, insight, and they get a broad set of experiences, and they get into an area where kind of all boats are rising, the whole unit's successful, and then they kind of go with it. I would say on the mentoring side, I just want to make a comment on that because I'm a real student of people in a sense, when I was more so when I was younger, and I used to really observe the managers I had. And I had some great ones and some horrible ones. And so I learned as much from the horrible ones as the great ones. I had one manager, really nice guy, but he was such a shy person. He would come in at 8 a.m., go into his office and close his door, and we wouldn't see him till 5 when he came out. And I was a co-op, and I remember telling him, I said, you probably should talk to some people. I mean, nobody knows who you are. You're the manager. It's just not a good way to operate. So it was funny when I became a manager. I always had this open door policy. I never shut my door. I just learned that's probably not a good way to manage people. So I think as this thing about mentors is really a key point. I mean, it's good to have multiple and many because not one person knows everything. And you're going to find yourself in different situations where you need different kinds of advice. And you're going to find yourself in situations where you work for a horrible leader. I remember I worked for one guy. I think he had a nervous breakdown. I think there was something wrong with the guy, really, because he took over this department and he asked the senior people in the department what all the jobs were in the department. And he came up with a list of 70. And he wrote them all out on little pieces of paper and he put it in this jar. He called it the job jar. And then he had people like pick out things from the jar. And unfortunately, I was working in Europe for 2 weeks at the time, so I got what was left in the jar. So you gotta be kidding me. I was doing X, and now you want me to do like the stuff nobody wants, So it wasn't a jar, I'm sorry. He listed and people voted or he picked number. I forget, but it was such a convoluted thing. I wasn't there. I just got the end result. And, so anyways, I think we learn as much from the great one as we do from the not so great.
Take one more question.
Yeah.
With the ever-decreasing cycle of microprocessors, Sandy Bridge just came out, Ivy Bridge sometime next year. Do you think this helps or hurts the business cycle of the users like IBM?
Well, I would think my whole simple thought on technology evolution is we've gotten ourselves into a situation where we need to create whole new markets pretty regularly to absorb the technology. When you look at how many chips now can come out of an average semiconductor fabrication plant, it's exponentially greater than what was 10 years ago, right? And so we need whole new markets created that use these technologies. You think about mobile phones and how the millions and millions of mobile phones are out there now. If we didn't have these applications, we couldn't consume the technology or capacity that we're coming up with. So to me, the challenge for any company that's in the technology field, especially if you're in the microprocessor industry, is you have to be able to understand where the markets are going in terms of new applications for the technology and make a decision, is that a place where you want your company to be or not? And I think it's going to continue to accelerate because of the advances, as you mentioned, that just continually are coming out at an accelerated pace. Technology is not a field for the faint of heart. You have to have a lot of courage to compete and stick into the technology business. And at least for our company, we're constantly looking to where we can add higher value. We do everything possible to stay out of the commodity space. And so that's where our focus is, to understand the technology, figure out where the applications are going to be today and the future, and then obviously move to those spaces where there's higher value.
Okay, let's thank Mr. Toole.